The Galaxy Council once stood as the symbol of unity across the stars. It was formed in the earliest days of interstellar diplomacy. When fragile worlds feared chaos and sought order, it presented itself as a beacon of fairness and wisdom, where disputes could be resolved without blood and where peace could be preserved through collective will. Many civilizations joined and placed their faith in the Council, believing that together no power could rise unchecked, and no voice would be ignored. Yet, behind the shining halls and golden promises, the Council was a stage of politics, envy, and hidden fear. Worlds that gained too much influence or knowledge began to draw suspicion. Those who questioned decisions were silenced, not through open war, but through subtle sanctions, shadowed threats, and orchestrated collapses. Earth knew of these whispers, but ignored them, for Earth, too, was young in the stars, and sought allies in order to survive. The cold expanse of Valoran, however, was different. It was not a fragile world, but a thriving jewel in the center of the galaxy. Its spires of crystal and steel rose above oceans that glimmered like liquid sapphire. Its cities thrived on knowledge. Its people valued honor, truth, and courage above all things. Valoran was not a world that hoarded its secrets. Instead, it shared freely with others, teaching science, sharing philosophy, and guiding younger civilizations, including Earth itself, with kindness and strength. Over decades, Valoran and Earth grew close allies, bound not by treaty alone but by genuine trust. Earth leaders visited Valoran, often walking among the shining plazas, listening to songs carried on the winds and learning wisdom from scholars who studied the mysteries of the cosmos. Together they dreamed of a future where the galaxy would not be ruled by fear but by cooperation for the good of all. This alliance, however, did not please the Council, for in their eyes Valoran was rising too quickly, its knowledge spreading too widely, its influence growing beyond the comfortable boundaries they imposed. The Council thrived on control, and the idea of a world that inspired independence filled them with unease. Whispers began among the inner chambers of the Council that Valoran could one day replace them, that Earth and other younger civilizations would rally around it and break the chain of Council authority. The decision was not announced publicly, no proclamations of war were given, no warning was offered in the shadowed halls of the Council. It was decided that Valoran must fall. They justified their choice with cold reasoning, claiming that it was necessary to preserve balance, that it was better to sacrifice one world than to risk the unraveling of the entire system. Yet beneath these hollow words lay only fear and envy, and the desire to crush a rival before it could shine brighter than the Council itself. Thus the fate of Valoran was sealed, not by its own failures but by the jealousy of those who claimed to lead the stars. The Council hid behind its banners of unity, even as it sharpened the blades of destruction, preparing to unleash them upon a world that had only ever sought peace and knowledge, a world that trusted too deeply in promises that were never meant to be kept. Valoran was a world unlike any other in the known galaxy. It rose from ancient struggles into an age of enlightenment, where the pursuit of knowledge was considered the highest form of honor. Its cities glittered like constellations upon the surface. Towers of translucent crystal and steel arched toward the skies, reflecting light across oceans so blue they seemed endless. Their ships sailed not only through water but through the void of space as well, built with grace and power that combined science and artistry into one. The people of Valoran were proud yet humble. They cherished wisdom more than wealth, and sought to live with courage in every moment. Their scholars spent lifetimes mapping the hidden paths of the stars. Their healers crafted medicines that saved entire species from extinction. Their builders designed cities that grew as gardens, alive and thriving in harmony with the land and the sea. Every Valoran citizen, from the youngest child to the eldest sage, understood they carried a responsibility not only to their world but to all who dwelled in the cosmos. Earth found in Valoran not merely an ally but a friend. The two worlds exchanged more than technology and resources. They exchanged hope and vision. Earth scientists studied in Valoran academies, learning arts of energy and navigation that had been hidden from them for centuries. Valoran students traveled to Earth, walking the ancient streets of human history, and seeing a culture still new to the stars yet burning with creativity and ambition. This exchange forged a bond that no treaty could fully capture. Festivals celebrated their unity. Ships bearing the banners of both worlds stood side by side above the skies. Children grew up knowing songs from two worlds and dreams of a future that was larger than themselves. The people of Earth and Valoran believed they were building a bridge across the galaxy, a bridge of trust that could not be broken. But in the chambers of the Council, that very bridge was seen as a threat. The Council watched with unease every new advancement on Valoran, every alliance signed with Earth, every voice in smaller worlds that began to look to Valoran for guidance rather than to the council halls. The council thrived on obedience and fear, but Valoran inspired courage and independence. It was said among the whispers of merchants and captains that the day might come when Valoran and Earth together would challenge the authority of the council, not with fleets of war but with the power of example and unity. This possibility could not be allowed, at least not in the eyes of those who ruled behind the banners of peace. So the council began to weave a darker narrative in secret they called Valoran. Reckless, ambitious, dangerous, they spread lies into the ears of other worlds, painting Valoran as a power that sought dominion rather than friendship, and slowly suspicion grew. Though many who knew Valoran doubted such claims, others began to fear what might happen if the council spoke truth there. Valoran, however, remained unaware of the growing shadow they continued to build, to teach, to explore. They sent emissaries to Earth, bringing gifts of knowledge and standing before human assemblies. With open hands, their trust was deep and their belief in justice unshakable. They could not imagine that those who spoke of unity and protection would ever turn against them, and so the jewel of the galaxy shone brighter each day, unaware that eyes of envy and fear were already set upon it, and that destruction was gathering like a storm waiting to fall. The night fell upon Valoran, with skies clear and calm, stars shimmering above like eternal guardians, while the cities below glowed with life. Markets bustled with trade scholars, debated in great halls, and children ran across the plazas singing songs of peace. It seemed like any other evening, a night filled with promise, yet beyond the horizon of the system, shadows gathered as the fleets of the council emerged from the void. They came in silence, their warships darkened to mask their arrival, each vessel armed with weapons forged not for defense but for annihilation. The commanders carried no words of warning, no message of negotiation. Their orders were simple and absolute: burn Valoran until nothing remained, erase its voice from the galaxy forever, as if it had never existed in the first place. The first strike came swiftly. Blinding lights tore across the skies as the capital towers were shattered in a storm of fire. Millions looked upward in confusion, their minds unable to comprehend that the council, which had spoken endlessly of unity and peace, was now raining destruction upon them. Screams filled the air as the ground quaked under bombardment. Buildings collapsed into ash and flames, devoured streets where laughter had lived moments before. Valoran defenders scrambled into action. Fleets were launched with determination, their pilots fighting not only for their world, but for the ideals they had sworn to uphold. Courage lit their hearts, yet they were outmatched. The council fleets were vast and relentless. Wave after wave descended, crushing resistance with merciless efficiency. Still the Valoran fought on their ships, weaving through the storm, striking back even as their numbers fell. One by one, families huddled in underground sanctuaries, hoping to escape the firestorms. Above, parents held their children, whispering words of comfort, though terror filled their eyes. The skies shook as energy beams tore through the atmosphere, igniting forests, leveling mountains, poisoning oceans. Once clear and pure, the jewel of the galaxy was being torn apart piece by piece, and the cries of its people echoed across the void. Messages of desperation were sent into the stars. Pleas for aid rushed outward on every frequency, voices of leaders shouting for help, calling for justice, praying someone would answer. Earth received fragments of these signals, broken by interference. A Valoran commander calling for unity before his ship was torn apart, a mother begging that her children be remembered, a scholar gasping his final words, promising that knowledge would endure, even as flames consumed his city. But no aid could arrive in time. The council fleets were swift and merciless. They swept across continents, crushing defenses, drowning the world in silence. The proud spires of Valoran crumbled into dust, and the great plazas where generations had gathered to share wisdom became graves under the weight of firestorms. The people who once dreamed of a brighter galaxy vanished in hours, their songs, their hopes, their courage, consumed by betrayal. When the final strike fell, the skies of Valoran burned crimson. The seas boiled, the mountains cracked, and the once thriving jewel was reduced to smoldering ruins. The council did not linger. They left behind only ashes and silence, declaring to themselves that order had been preserved. Yet the stars bore witness, and the memory of Valoran would not be so easily erased, for the cries of the fallen had carried too far and could never be silenced. Across the vastness of space, the cries of Valoran reached Earth. Broken fragments of voices carried through the void, some clear enough to pierce the heart, others distorted into static and silence. Yet every fragment told the same story. Val was burning. Valoran was dying. The people who had once stood as teachers and allies were being erased before the eyes of the galaxy. Earth leaders gathered in command chambers, their faces pale as the transmissions played again and again. Scholars begging for help, soldiers calling for unity, children screaming as the walls around them crumbled. At first disbelief held the room. The council had always spoken of unity and balance. Surely these messages were fabrications, perhaps the work of pirates or traitors. Yet as the signals multiplied and the images sharpened, denial withered into grief and grief hardened into rage. The council had done this. There was no other hand capable of unleashing such fury, no other power that could strike so swiftly and so mercilessly. Earth had trusted the council, had followed its guidance, had accepted its authority, and in return the council had murdered a friend. The first fleets of Earth were already moving when the final message arrived. It was a flickering image of the Valoran High Chancellor, his face bloodied and his voice breaking, yet steady. He spoke of betrayal, he spoke of courage. He declared that Valoran would never bow to tyranny, even in death, and then the signal ended in fire and silence. The chamber fell still. No one breathed for a long moment as the weight of those words settled like stone upon every soul in the room. When Earthships finally reached Valoran space, the sight that met them was one they would never forget. The once gleaming world now hung broken and lifeless before them. Oceans boiled away into black steam, continents cracked and scarred by bombardment, cities nothing more than ashes drifting in poisonous winds. Silence reigned where laughter had once filled the air. Entire regions glowed with the sickening light of orbital firestorms that still burned long after the council fleets had departed. Soldiers who had come prepared for rescue found nothing to save. They walked through ruins where only shadows remained. They gathered fragments of banners and recorded the names of the fallen where they could. Yet most of Valoran lay beyond recognition. The jewel of the galaxy had been reduced to a graveyard, a reminder of what envy and fear could do when wrapped in the false promise of peace. The crews of Earthships stood in silence, staring at the devastation, some with tears in their eyes, others with fury burning too deep for words. The news spread quickly across Earth. The people who had celebrated festivals of unity with Valoran now stood in mourning vigils. Their anger grew as they realized the council had slaughtered not enemies but friends who had given nothing but trust and kindness. Grief turned into fire across the nations, and from the highest chambers of leadership came a vow that echoed across the stars. Valoran would be avenged. Earth would rise, and the council would learn that betrayal carries a cost. No fleet, no fortress, and no council chamber could shield them from the grief that swept across Earth. Became a storm that no leader could contain. Streets once filled with ordinary voices now thundered with cries for justice. Citizens gathered in plazas holding the banners of Valoran beside the flags of Earth. Candles burned through the nights as names of the fallen were spoken aloud, though most of those names were lost to the fires that consumed Valoran. People wept for them, as if they had always been their own brothers and sisters, for to Earth the bond had never been one of politics alone. It had been one of true friendship. In the chambers of government, the air grew heavy with anger. Generals stood with their fists clenched. Ministers raised their voices demanding action, yet none spoke louder than the survivors of Valoran, refugees who had escaped before the final bombardments. Their testimonies pierced every heart, describing skies raining with fire, oceans boiling into steam, families torn apart in moments. Their voices broke, yet their determination never wavered. They pleaded with Earth not to let their world vanish into silence, not to let the council rewrite history into lies. The leaders of Earth swore upon those pleas that the betrayal would not stand. A vow was spoken with no hesitation. Valoran would not be forgotten, its killers would not escape the rage of justice, and Earth would never again place blind faith in the council. The vow spread through every city and every home. Men and women enlisted in the military in numbers never seen before. Shipyards worked without rest, factories thundered night and day. Children watched their parents march into training camps and knew they carried the memory of Valoran with them from the highest peaks to the farthest colonies. The same words echoed: revenge for Valoran, justice for the fallen, no forgiveness, no retreat. Earth became a world united by fury and grief. Divisions that once divided nations dissolved under the weight of their shared purpose. Politicians who had argued endlessly now stood together. Commanders who once competed for pride now fought only to see their fleets grow stronger. Every act of preparation carried the same unspoken promise to the people of Valoran that they had not died in vain. Songs of mourning turned into songs of war. Choirs filled the great halls with voices rising like thunder. Drums of recruitment beat in the streets. Banners of Earth were painted with the colors of Valoran, and carried high above the crowds as soldiers marched into orbit ports, where the new fleets waited. Each warship bore a name etched in honor, some for Valoran cities, some for Valoran heroes, others for the countless innocents whose names had been lost to the fire. Every cannon, every missile, every shield, was dedicated to them. Earth was no longer the uncertain power that once looked to the Council for guidance. It had been transformed into something far greater, forged by grief, tempered by rage, sharpened by unity. The vow had become destiny, and destiny now pointed only in one direction, toward the heart of the Council itself. Earth had sworn, and the stars would bear witness. The time of silence had ended, the time of vengeance had begun, and no fortress of the Council would withstand the fury that was already rising. The shipyards of Earth became living beasts of fire and steel, their furnaces burning without pause, their machines hammering night and day as if the planet itself had awakened into rage from orbit. One could see the glow of countless docks stretching like rings around the world, each one birthing warships larger and stronger than any Earth had ever built before. The skies thundered with the roar of engines being tested, while the seas churned with vessels carrying supplies to the ever-hungry yards. The world that once dreamed of peace now breathed only war. Workers toiled with unshakable resolve, entire families volunteering to build the weapons that would avenge. Valoran fathers and mothers forged armor plating while their children carried tools and food to the lines. Students left classrooms to join training programs. Engineers who once designed ships for exploration now shaped them into machines of destruction. Every rivet driven into steel was laid with purpose. Every spark of welding flame was fueled by memory of the fallen. The people no longer questioned the cost. They only asked how soon the fleets would sail. Still just filled training grounds in every nation. The air echoed with drills, the clash of weapons, and the shouts of commanders who forged determination into discipline. Recruits carried the banners of Earth alongside those of Valoran, painting their armor with colors of both worlds. They swore oaths before statues of Valoran heroes, promising that they would not falter even if death awaited them. The spirit of Valoran lived within each of them, not as an idea, but as a fire that burned in every step, every strike, every breath above them. In orbit, the first great fleets began to assemble, massive carriers, bristling with weapons, sleek destroyers built for speed, heavy cruisers armed with devastating cannons. Each ship carried a name, and with each name carried the weight of memory. One vessel was named for the Valoran High Chancellor, another for the city of Tyrannus that had been swallowed in fire, another for the children of Vala, whose songs were cut short by bombardment. When the crew stepped aboard, they felt the presence of those who had been lost, guiding their hands, steadying their hearts. Across Earth, leaders spoke to their people, declaring that the day of vengeance drew near. The Council believed itself untouchable, but its fleets would soon face the storm that Earth had forged. Every broadcast carried the same message: no forgiveness, no retreat, no mercy. The people cheered not with joy but with grim determination, for they knew the war would be long and terrible. Yet none wavered, for they carried not only their own lives into battle, but the memory of Valoran. The galaxy watched in silence, smaller worlds whispering among themselves. Some secretly cheered Earth for daring to defy the Council. Others trembled in fear of what retaliation might come, but none could deny the truth. Earth had become something greater than it had ever been, united, stronger than ever before, armed with the fire of grief and the steel of vengeance. The shipyards roared like thunder, promising that soon the stars themselves would witness the storm of Earth unleashed. The fleets of Earth rose from their docks like an endless tide of steel and fire, their engines blazing trails across the void as they set their course for Council space. Never before had such power gathered under one banner. The unity of Earth had become a storm that no wall could withstand. Every vessel bore names of Valoran heroes and lost cities, their memory etched into the armor of war, and every soldier who stood aboard swore that their cause was not conquest but justice's. The fleets advanced. Silence ruled the stars. No signal came from the Council, no message of apology, no attempt at deception. The arrogance of those who had ordered Valoran destroyed convinced them that Earth would never dare to challenge their authority. Yet, when the first Earth warships broke through the border patrols, the illusion of invincibility crumbled with a single strike. The battle began above the world of Entherus, a Council stronghold guarded by fleets that had once been called unbreakable. The defenders prepared for a swift rout, expecting Earth to scatter before their disciplined lines, but the soldiers of Earth carried rage sharper than any blade, and when the order came, their guns unleashed storms of fire that tore through enemy ranks the defenders fell in chaos, their commanders stunned at the precision and ferocity of an army they had dismissed as weak. Earth pressed forward without hesitation, cruisers and destroyers moving in perfect formation, as if guided by a single will. Fighters poured from carriers like swarms of lightning, striking engines, weapons and command bridges with relentless precision. Antheris fell in hours, its skies burning with council wreckage, its ground forces surrendering in disbelief, the survivors whispering that Earth fought not like a young world but like a force of destiny. Word of the battle spread across council territory, and for the first time in centuries, fear entered the halls of those who ruled. Whispers ran through their chambers. Earth had done what no other dared. It had struck directly at the heart of their power, and it had won with overwhelming force. Yet still the council refused to admit defeat. They gathered new fleets from across their domain, believing numbers would crush resolve, but they did not understand that Earth no longer fought for survival, it fought for vengeance. Each new battle carried the same pattern, the council fleets arriving in numbers, confident of victory, only to be shattered against the unity and fury of Earth's soldiers. Planets that had once raised the banners of the council now watched as Earth liberated them, or reduced their fortresses to ash, depending on their allegiance. Resistance was not met with mercy, for every hesitation carried the memory of Valoran, the faces of the fallen guiding Earth's hand. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as Earth advanced further. With every victory the soldiers whispered the same oath. Valoran, avenged. Valoran remembered. The oath grew louder until it became a war cry that echoed across the galaxy, shaking the foundation of the council itself and promising that no stronghold, no fortress, and no throne would stand when the storm of Earth had finished its course. The campaign of Earth swept deeper into council territory, each battle a hammer blow that shattered defenses thought to be eternal. Stronghold after stronghold fell under the relentless advance. Worlds that once boasted of their loyalty to the council now trembled as Earth fleets filled their skies, bringing with them a storm that no negotiation could calm. The people of these worlds watched with fear, some cheering in secret for liberation, while others cowered knowing they had supported those who had ordered the death of Valoran. Council assembled its grand armada, a fleet so vast it stretched across the horizon of stars, meant to crush the rebellion in one decisive strike. Their commanders shouted of discipline and tradition. Their soldiers were told Earth was reckless, unprepared, and fragile. Yet when the battle came, the illusion dissolved in fire. Earth formations moved with precision like a blade cutting through stone, their weapons roaring with vengeance, each strike carrying the memory of Valoran, and each loss only deepening their fury. Worlds that had been the pride of the council fell, one by one, fortresses reduced to ruins, orbital platforms shattered, fleets scattered into debris fields drifting silently through the void. Earth soldiers marched upon conquered soil, carrying banners of both Earth and Valoran, their voices rising in chants of justice, their presence a reminder that betrayal could not be hidden behind lies. Every victory carried weight beyond strategy. It became a message written in fire across the stars. The council leaders grew desperate, their halls once filled with arrogance now echoed with fear. They sent envoys carrying offers of truce, their words dripping with false remorse. But Earth did not listen. There would be no peace, no forgiveness, not while the ashes of Valoran still smoldered in silence. The memory of that world was too heavy, the cries of its people too loud to be drowned by hollow promises. Earth soldiers heard the pleas of surrender but answered only with fire for mercy. Had died with Valoranocris. The galaxy whispers spread. Smaller civilizations spoke in secret gatherings, wondering if the age of the council was ending. Some prayed Earth would succeed, others feared that if the council fell, chaos would consume the stars. Yet all could see that Earth fought not for conquest but for justice. Their banners carried no claim to dominion, only the vow that no atrocity would remain unanswered. The galaxy held its breath, watching as the storm pushed closer to the very heart of council space. Every battle became more brutal, every resistance met with unyielding determination. Earth fleets pressed forward without pause, their admirals relentless, their soldiers fearless, guided by the oath that Valoran would not be forgotten. And so strongholds that had stood for centuries collapsed in fire. Council leaders once worshipped as untouchable, now hid in fortified chambers, begging for mercy they had never offered to others, their empire unraveling strand by strand as Earth carved its way through their defenses. The stars bore witness to a truth no longer deniable. The council was no longer the master of the galaxy. Earth had risen not only as a power but as a force of justice and vengeance, and with each victory the cry grew louder. No forgiveness, no retreat. Valoran remembered Valoran avenged. The council could beg and plead, but the storm would not stop until the arrogance of their throne was ground into dust. Beneath the boots of those who carried the memory of the fallen, the council fortress world of Kerith stood at the center of their power, a citadel that had endured for millennia, its walls of steel and stone wrapped in rings of firepower, its skies guarded by fleets that stretched farther than the eye could see. It was here, the council believed, they would make their final stand, clinging to the belief that their authority could not be broken, that Earth would hesitate before striking the heart of their empire. Yet Earth did not hesitate, for hesitation had died on the day Valoran burned. The fleets of Earth emerged from the void like a storm without end. Carriers, cruisers, destroyers, every class of ship advanced in flawless formation, their banners shining in the light of distant stars, and upon those banners the memory of Valoran burned brighter than any sun. The council fleets rose to meet them, commanders barking orders, desperate to hold their last sanctuary, but the soldiers beneath them no longer carried the pride they once knew. Fear had seeped into their bones as whispers of Earth's vengeance spread across their ranks. The first clash shook the skies above Kerith. Beams of energy tore across the void. Ships exploded into fragments that drifted like dying stars. The council unleashed its full might, wave after wave crashing against Earth's formation. Yet the storm held steady, each strike answered with a greater one. Earth soldiers did not falter, for every loss they suffered reminded them of Valoran, and gave them strength to push harder until the unbreakable walls of Kerith began to crumble on the ground. The battle raged as Earth forces descended in fire, their boots striking the soil of the council throne. World soldiers marched through fortresses with unyielding resolve, their weapons cutting through defenses that had once seemed eternal. The council leaders watched from their chambers, their voices trembling as they argued whether to fight or flee, yet no escape remained. Earth surrounded them from all sides, pressing closer with each moment until the fortress walls shook with thunder. The council begged for mercy. Envoys rushed forward, waving white banners, their voices filled with promises of peace, of shared rule, of reparations for Valoran. But Earth gave no answer. Their soldiers pressed forward, their admirals issued no orders of retreat. The silence of Valoran filled every ear, and the memory of its flames guided every hand. There would be no mercy for those who had shown none. When the final chamber doors fell, the council sat trembling upon their thrones, the arrogance that had ruled the galaxy now reduced to dust. Earth soldiers stood before them, their faces unflinching, their voices rising in one cry: Valoran remembered, Valoran avenged. And with those words the reign of the council ended, shattered by the very people they had once dismissed as weak. The galaxy trembled as the news spread. The council was broken, its empire dismantled, its arrogance crushed under the weight of justice. Earth stood victorious, yet not triumphant, for no victory could restore Valoran. The ashes of that world still drifted in silence, but its memory lived on, carried in every soldier, every banner, every ship that had fought in its name. The vow had been fulfilled, yet the wound remained a scar upon the stars, a reminder that betrayal carries a price that no power, no fleet, and no throne can escape. Thus, the story of Valoran became eternal, sung across the galaxy as both tragedy and warning. The council had massacred a friend, and Earth had answered with fire, swift and merciless, and though the stars themselves moved on, their light forever bore witness to the vow that no world betrayed would ever be forgotten.